It's interesting, these heroes you name. Drogo, Jorah, Dario, even this Jon Snow. They all fell in love with you.
Jon Snow's not in love with me.
Oh, my mistake. I suppose he stares at you longingly because he's hopeful for a successful military alliance.
You might be onto something. Hello and welcome everyone. In this video we are diving deeper into Jon Snow's Season 7 plotline and examining it for a theory that is mostly known as Political Jon Theory. There is some possible foreshadowing in the books as well. However, this video is going to focus on the show since Season 7 made a lot of people wonder about Jon's motivation. Since the writing of Jon and his storyline in Season 7 was often pretty off, some things were out of character, a lot was told without giving us any actual evidence, there were contradictions with acting, storyline and dialogue, interactions that didn't really make any sense, etc, etc. There are many clues that might give possible explanations for a lot of it. This theory is essentially based on the following foundation. 1. Jon is acting as protector of the North, and as this he does whatever is necessary to ensure the survival of his people. 2. He has smartened up, shows clever political skills and learned how to play the game. And 3. His stated mission is getting Daenerys Targaryen to march north with her dragons and her huge army. His mission has got one goal: defeating the army of the dead, protecting the North, his family and the people of Westeros. The biggest problem probably was that the audience was left completely in the dark about Jon's motives for many of the things he did. But I have to give a fair warning ahead of this. This theory is not uncontroversial because some think it would kind of ruin Jon's character, others think it would redeem him and save his characterization. However, it's just a theory and offers possible interpretations for the writing and acting and directing in many scenes. And after all, this is still Game of Thrones we are talking about, known for its many layers of complex storytelling and surprising twists. I think it's a very interesting theory and I hope I'm able to convey at least the very core of it. There are so many aspects, so if you're interested in more, please check out some of the blogs and analysis works in the video description for further and deeper explanations. Let's begin with Jon's mindset and his motivation before he leaves Winterfell at the beginning of the season. The Northern houses had declared him king in the North after the Battle of the Bastards. They made him their king even though he's still officially a bastard, which shows their immense respect and their belief in him. This again put Jon into a very fortunate position. As king, he's got the best chance to protect the North and all of Westeros from any threats. Basically, his entire character has been built around this. Saving and protecting the realm, whether he's Azor Ahai Reborn, the prince that was promised, or whatever. Jon already managed to unite the Northern houses and the Wildlings, mostly to ensure everyone's survival. But he also knows it's not enough. He receives a letter from Tyrion, now Hand of the Queen to Daenerys Targaryen, who came over from Essos to take her birthright, the Iron Throne. Tyrion invites Jon to Dragonstone to meet with Daenerys, who not only commands a huge army, but also 3 dragons. He also receives a letter from Sam, who informs him that there could be a massive store of dragonglass at Dragonstone.
We need this dragonglass, my lord. We know that dragonglass can destroy both White Walkers and their army. We need to mine it and turn it into weapons. But more importantly, we need allies. The Night King's army grows larger by the day. We can't defeat them on our own. We don't have the numbers. Daenerys has her own army, and she has dragonfire. I need to try and persuade her to fight with us.
Have you forgotten what happened to our grandfather? The Mad King invited him to King's Landing and roasted him alive.
I remember the Mad King all too well. A Targaryen cannot be trusted, nor can a Lannister.
We called your brother king.
And then he rode south and lost his kingdom.
So, this is what we can gather from this. Jon's motivation is going south to gain Daenerys as a powerful ally with dragonfire and to mine dragonglass. He also knows he probably has to convince Daenerys. Sansa and the Northern Lords voiced their great concerns about another Robb Stark disaster and a Mad King Reloaded drama. Even back in Season 6, when Jon and Sansa were rallying an army to reclaim Winterfell, Lord Glover said something that pretty much foreshadowed Jon's possible path in Season 7.
When my brother was lord of this castle, he answered Rob's call and hailed him king in the north. And where was King Rob when the Ironborn attacked this castle? When they threw my wife and children in prison and brutalized and killed our subjects? Taking up with a foreign whore, getting himself and those who followed him killed.
So let us summarize for now. Jon knows, of course, the Northerners cherish their independence, he knows they don't trust a Targaryen, and he knows they're afraid another Robb Stark scenario might happen. In addition to this, Jon also knows that the current Queen of Westeros, Cersei, is someone he should better not cross. Cersei sends him a letter as well, telling him to bend the knee, otherwise he would suffer the fate of all traitors. Sansa warns him about Cersei, and not just about her.
You've been so consumed with the enemy to the north, you've forgotten about the one to the south. You're the military man, but I know her. If you're her enemy, she'll never stop until she's destroyed you. Everyone who's ever crossed her, she's found a way to murder. You have to be smarter than father. You need to be smarter than Robb. I loved them, I missed them, but they made stupid mistakes and they both lost their heads for it.
And how should I be smarter? By listening to you.
Would that be so terrible?
Ned's major mistake was that he was too open and trusting towards Cersei and underestimated not just her, but also the entire plotting, scheming structure of the Court of King's Landing. It backfired and got him killed. Robb's major mistake was falling for a foreigner, choosing love over duty, leaving himself open to be attacked and getting himself and those who followed him killed. Jon needs to be smarter than them, or in other words, learn to play the game. If we look at what seemingly happened afterwards without the Political Jon Theory filter, it very much looks like he is doing similar mistakes as Ned and Robb. He trusted Cersei, he fell for someone he shouldn't have, and he lost his kingdom, although he gave it away when he had a choice. But there might be more beneath the surface than what we see. It all comes down to his motivations, really, why he did what he did. I'm inclined to believe that Jon did learn and that he did become smarter. In Season 6, he didn't listen to Sansa and her warnings when they were fighting against Ramsay. As Kit Harington himself said, that was Jon's big fault that season.
I think Jon's fault this year is he doesn't listen to Sansa.
In Season 7, we saw that Jon started to listen to her, asked about her thoughts when they got Tyrion's letter, and he trusted her to rule the North until he returns. Kit also said in another interview that she has knowledge he doesn't have. He listened to her more this season. And even Jon admitted towards Tyrion later,
she's much smarter than she lets on. She's starting to let on.
Also in another interview, Kit was talking about the changes in Jon in Season 7. Jon is probably one of the more stable characters all the way through. You return to him each year and he doesn't change a great deal. But this year he does change. He becomes a politician. Having gone to the brink and seen things that other people haven't seen, he starts manipulating people in a very Jon Snow way, in a very kind way. Jon's motivation before he leaves Winterfell is clear. He needs to try to gain someone who has dragons as an ally and to mine dragonglass for weapons. And he received several warnings from his people. So he arrives at Dragonstone with Davos, and they are immediately stripped of their weapons and their ship. As expected, Jon's attempts to gain Daenerys as an ally are in vain. She thought he had come to bend the knee. She doesn't believe him about the existence of the White Walkers, and from her point of view, you can't really blame her. She might own dragons, but dragons have always been a part of Targaryen culture and myth. An army of ice zombies, however, quite hard to believe. Dany came to Westeros to conquer the Iron Throne. This is her political mission, her priority, her motivation. Everything else is secondary, if not unimportant. This scene also sets the tone for any interaction that follows.
The army of the dead is real. The White Walkers are real. The Night King is real. I've seen them. If they get past the wall and we're squabbling amongst ourselves, We're finished.
I've been shamed and betrayed, raped and defiled. Do you know what kept me standing through all those years in exile? Faith. Not in any gods. Not in myths and legends. In myself. In Daenerys Targaryen. The world hadn't seen a dragon in centuries until my children were born. The Dothraki hadn't crossed the sea. Any sea. They did for me. I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms. And I will.
He is the first to make allies of wildlings and Northmen. He was named Lord Commander of the Night's Watch. He was named King in the North. Not because of his birthright. He has no birthright. He's a damn bastard. All those things you don't believe in. He faced those things. He fought those things for the good of his people. He risked his life for his people. He took a knife in the heart for his people. He gave his own...
Dany goes on and on about herself, about what she had to suffer, what she personally had to endure to come to Westeros, and what she accomplished. Jon is in a very tricky, difficult situation, but from this first encounter he can tell 3 things for sure. She does not believe him about the White Walkers, her priority is the Iron Throne, and she sees herself as extraordinary and destined to rule. An important issue that will come into play with Jon's behavior later on. Also notice that Jon doesn't reveal anything about himself. The only one who drops a few tidbits is Davos. Nothing personal, and please, no resurrection talk. I think Jon not bending the knee at this point is absolutely understandable. He's known her for 5 minutes and she made it clear that she doesn't believe him anyway. However, he makes his priority, his mission, very clear in this scene.
I mean no offense, Your Grace, but I don't know you. As far as I can tell, your claim to the throne rests entirely on your father's name, and my own father fought to overthrow the Mad King. The Lords of the North placed their trust in me to lead them, and I will continue to do so as well as I can.
And that's exactly what Jon does with all his actions during the rest of the season. Dany declares him a rebel and he becomes a prisoner at Dragonstone.
I'm a prisoner on this island.
I wouldn't say you're a prisoner on this island. You're free to walk the castle, the beaches, to go wherever you want.
Except to my ship. He took my ship. Everyone told me to learn from my father's mistakes. Don't go south. Don't answer a summons from the Mad King's daughter, a foreign invader. And here I am. A Northern Fool.
Of course you can't give up that easily, but Jon has to change his approach and his tactics. Tyrion might be the one who unknowingly sows the seeds for Jon as politician in the making.
Daenerys could have sailed for Westeros long ago, but she didn't. Instead, she stayed where she was and saved many people from horrible fates. Some of whom are on this island with us right now. While you're our guest here, you might consider asking them what they think of the Mad King's daughter.
She protects people from monsters, just as you do. That's why she came here. And she's not about to head north to fight an enemy she's never seen on the word of a man she doesn't know. After a single meeting, it's not a reasonable thing to ask.
Tyrion makes it very clear that reasoning with Daenerys just with words is in vain. Jon won't be able to convince her just by claiming something. Tyrion also points out Dany's accomplishments again, something not just Dany herself, but also the people who follow her tend to do. Jon leaves exactly with a set purpose, finding out more about Dany, what moves her, and more about the people who surround her and who follow her. He first approaches Daenerys in private.
I named them for my brothers, Viserys and Rhaegar. They're both gone now. You lost 2 brothers as well.
And just like during the first encounter, he dodges any personal topics. This becomes a pattern to be continued. However, Dany, after all, allows him to mine dragonglass. She doesn't believe him, but keeps him busy. He leaves without another word, and she turns around to watch him leave. This can be seen as a first sign that she might slowly warm up to him. Jon actually tries a few tactics at Dragonstone. One is a more personal approach in the cave.
They were here together. The children and the first men. They fought together against their common enemy. Despite their differences, despite their suspicions. Together.
Jon is really stressing the theme of togetherness. He even initiates physical contact here, which is pretty unlike him. Usually it's women entering his personal space, like Ygritte or Melisandre. But it does match with what Kit was saying about Jon manipulating people in a very kind Jon Snow way. He creates an atmosphere of closeness and stresses togetherness. Dany, however, ends up telling him to bend the knee once again. This entire talk should give Jon some flashbacks of his dealings with Stannis and Mance Rayder. Dany mirrors Stannis, while Jon mirrors Mance's situation in a way.
You want the wildlings to march in your army?
They swear to follow me, I'll pardon them. We'll take Winterfell. Once the North is won, I'll declare them citizens of the realm. I'll give them land to live on. I'll offer them their lives and their freedom. If Mance kneels before me and swears his loyalty.
Don't think that's likely.
He likes you. Convince him to bend the knee, or he burns.
Jon tried to reason with Mance only after Stannis made his threat because he knew Mance would never kneel voluntarily. Stannis used this as leverage to get Mance to bend the knee. And now Dany uses her dragons and army as leverage to get Jon to bend the knee.
And you say you can't defeat them without my armies and my dragons?
No, I don't think I can.
I will fight for you. I will fight for the North. When you bend the knee.
He told me you weren't here to conquer. He told me your people had bled enough.
That's right. I don't want them bleeding for Stannis Baratheon either.
You spent your life convincing 90 clans to come together for the first time in history. You didn't do it for power. You didn't do it for glory. You brought them together to save them because none of them has survived the winter, not if they're north of the wall. Isn't their survival more important than your pride?
Pride? Fuck my pride. This isn't about that.
My people won't accept a southern ruler. Not after everything they've suffered.
They will if their king does. They chose you to lead them. They chose you to protect them. Isn't their survival more important than your pride?
But if you can't understand why I won't enlist my people in a foreigner's war, there's no point explaining.
While there might have been a certain amount of self-esteem involved, Mance basically refused to bend the knee because he didn't want his people to die in someone else's war. I think for him it was really a lose-lose situation. Bend the knee and your people fight and die for Stannis, or don't bend the knee, you die and your people face the winter north of the wall. And Mance couldn't even be sure if Stannis really wins the battle. But the writers make it seem like Jon eventually bent the knee also because he learned from Mance Rayder's fate and ditched his pride.
Mance Rayder was a brave man, proud man. The king beyond the wall never bent the knee. How many of his people died for his pride?
0 Tormund, or actually just 1, Mance himself if you want to call him proud. Jon must realize in this moment that Dany got a pretty picture of Westeros in her head that has next to nothing to do with reality. He is absolutely right. The Northern Lords will not accept the Southern ruler, not even if their king does. He knows this because they made that very clear to him, but it also gives him a very good impression of Dany's mindset and knowledge. But Jon depends on her. He needs her. He needs her resources for the survival of his people. Just like it was Mance Rayder's priority to keep his people safe, it's Jon's priority as well to keep his own people safe.
You all crowned me your king. I never wanted it. I never asked for it. But I accepted it because the North is my home. It's part of me and I will never stop fighting for it, no matter the odds.
Any decision for Jon to pledge himself to Daenerys is driven by this priority, fighting for the North and protecting it. She tells him that the fate of his people rests entirely on him bending the knee or not. He tried the personal cave approach by stressing togetherness. It failed. He probably knows she still doesn't believe him about the White Walkers, as we see later on beyond the wall.
And you need to convince the one with the dragons or the one who fucks her brother?
Both.
The following scene is something like another turning point. Dany lost all her allies. She blames Tyrion for this and berates him for not wanting his family to die. She is saying this right in the presence of Jon, who, as we know, values family more than anything. The camera even focuses on his reaction afterwards.
If I have underestimated our enemies...
Our enemies? Your family, you mean? Perhaps you don't want to hurt them after all.
Of course, Tyrion still has a strong love for his brother Jaime. It's what makes his situation and position so utterly difficult. Even Cersei is still part of his family, no matter their current broken relationship. If you observe Jon's background reactions to Dany's outburst, he seems to become a little bit fed up.
You'll want to discuss this amongst yourselves.
You will stay. All my allies are gone. They've been taken from me while I've been sitting here on this island.
But this scene gives Jon a first impression of Dany's impulsive nature. She wants to ditch any clever plans and fly directly to King's Landing with her dragons to attack the Red Keep. Her first instinct tends to be fire and blood. Tyrion is trying to reason with her, and suddenly she's asking Jon for war advice. The funny thing is that Jon doesn't tell her anything different from what Tyrion was telling her. Don't use your dragons and burn down cities and castles. You don't want to be Queen of the Ashes. What's different is the way he's saying this.
I never thought that dragons would exist again. No one did. The people who follow you know that you made something impossible happen. Maybe that helps them believe that you can make other impossible things happen. Build a world that's different from the shit one they've always known. But if you use them to melt castles and burn cities, you're not different. You're just more of the same.
He doesn't even tell her what to do. He just tells her what she should not do, and with some heavy sugarcoating. Jon seems to gradually absorb the language of the people around Dany and also the language of herself. At their very first meeting, he could already tell that she considers herself extraordinary. She doesn't want to be like everyone else. She wants to be different. Tyrion was also stressing her great accomplishments. Jon didn't really seem impressed when Dany told him about her accomplishments. Why would he suddenly be so impressed? Because he needs to talk her out of possibly burning King's Landing. So he uses the Camp Dany language. You did extraordinary things. You wouldn't be different if you used your dragons to burn cities and castles. I guess she kind of listened to Jon because she doesn't attack the Red Keep. Instead, she attacked the Lannister forces in the open field with her Dothraki army and a huge dragon. In any case, asking Jon for advice, after all still a prisoner, shows that his influence seems to be growing. She listens to Tyrion less and less throughout the season. The important thing for Jon is that he finds out what really matters to Dany, what moves her, what she really cares about, and what her primary instincts are, so he finds a way to deal with her. Next on, we have a little Jon and Davos interaction.
What do you think of her? Who? I believe you know of whom I speak.
I think she has a good heart.
A good heart? I've noticed you staring at a good heart.
So, according to Davos, Jon was checking out Dany. Not that we've ever seen him do this, and he didn't even seem to know who Davos was talking about. But at the end, what does it mean really? Why not admit that someone is beautiful? The real strange thing is Jon contradicting his good heart comment just a few seconds later.
How did a slave girl come to advise Daenerys Targaryen?
She bought me from my master and set me free.
That was good of her. Of course, you're serving her now, aren't you?
I serve my queen because I want to serve my queen. Because I believe in her.
And if you wanted to sail home to North tomorrow?
Then she would give me a ship and wish me good fortune.
You believe that?
I know it.
He doesn't quite seem to buy this, but why? If Missandei considers herself a free woman who chooses to serve Dany and could leave whenever she wanted, then why does Jon doubt this? Maybe because he's asking her this as prisoner of Dragonstone who is not allowed to leave because he was declared a rebel for not wanting to follow Dany? But Jon is doing what his discussion with Tyrion set him out to do, asking and studying the people around Dany.
All of us who came with her from Essos, we believe in her. She's not our queen because she's the daughter of some king we never knew. She's the queen we chose.
Missandei's description of her mirrors exactly how Dany portrayed herself during the first encounter. As extraordinary, as chosen, as special. Jon is still struggling to find a way to handle Daenerys. He's learning, he's observing, and he's adapting in the course of the time. He soon realizes that the people around Dany who followed her from Essos are subservient and utterly devoted to her. Tyrion pointed out her accomplishments. Missandei and especially Jorah, whom Jon meets later on, put her on a pedestal. Dany returns with Drogon, and Jon shares a brief moment with the dragon that visibly terrifies him. However, the way Drogon reacts to Jon seems to impress Dany a lot. This scene also teaches politician Jon that he has to be more careful with his words and what he says in front of her.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Wasn't the word I was thinking of, but yes, they are. Gorgeous beasts.
They're not beasts to me. No matter how big they get, how terrifying to everyone else. They're my children.
Oops. Wrong language, Jon, wrong language. He realizes this quickly and tries to correct himself, but gorgeous beasts doesn't really make it any better. He considers the dragons beasts. To him they are weapons for the Great War. Dany calls them her children. He learns just how special they are to her. The content of the talk once again. She reveals a little bit about herself, Jon nothing about himself. It's like Dany constantly tries to get information out of him and points out what they have in common, while Jon shuts himself off.
We both want to help people. We can only help them from a position of strength. Sometimes strength is terrible. When you first came here, Sir Davos said you took a knife in the heart for your people.
Sir Davos gets carried away.
You lost 2 brothers as well.
Next on, Jon receives a letter from Winterfell, and he learns that not only are the White Walkers marching towards Eastwatch, he also learns that Bran and Arya are still alive and at Winterfell.
I thought Arya was dead. I thought Bran was dead.
I'm happy for you. You don't look happy.
Well, of course Jon doesn't look happy. His last remaining family, Sansa, Arya and Bran, are at Winterfell and the White Walkers are approaching. He is still trapped at Dragonstone. He's running out of time and needs to leave as soon as possible.
Bran saw the Night King and his army marching towards Eastwatch. If they make it past the wall...
The wall has kept them out for thousands of years, presumably.
I need to go home.
You said you don't have enough men.
We'll fight with the men we have. Unless you'll join us.
And give the country to Cersei. As soon as I march away, she marches in.
Perhaps not. Cersei thinks the army of the dead is nothing but a story, made up by wet nurses to frighten children. What if we prove her wrong?
So, now Dany's condition for support seems to be a ceasefire with Cersei. The White Hunt happens so Dany can show White to Cersei and everyone achieves a temporary truce. This again is important for Jon's political mission. He wants to lead the insane mission beyond the wall, and it's not surprising really. It gives him a chance to finally leave Dragonstone and to do something. If it takes capturing a White for Dany to finally march north, he's even willing to risk his life once again. That's typically Jon really. And also, Jon still doesn't seem to think that Dany believes him about the White Walkers.
And you need to convince the one with the dragons or the one who fucks her brother?
Both.
He needs to convince Dany, so she finally believes him about the White Walkers, and Cersei because Dany doesn't march north unless she gets a ceasefire.
I haven't given you permission to leave.
With respect, Your Grace, I don't need your permission. I am a king.
Dany doesn't want him to leave. Her look tells us that she has grown quite fond of him. But he insists, and his choice of words is quite interesting.
I put my trust in you. A stranger. Because I knew it was the best chance for my people, for all our people. Now I'm asking you to trust in a stranger.
Jon has been at Dragonstone for several weeks, if not months. Yet he refers to himself as a stranger. But it does make sense considering his behavior around Daenerys until this point. Not revealing anything personal and keeping any conversations focused on his mission. In fact, this was the smartest thing that Jon could actually do. Not trusting anyone and revealing anything at a place that keeps me as prisoner. But an episode later...
It's interesting, these heroes you name. Drogo, Jorah, Dario, even this Jon Snow. They all fell in love with you.
Jon Snow's not in love with me.
Oh, my mistake. I suppose he stares at you longingly because he's hopeful for a successful military alliance.
Now, according to Tyrion, Jon is in love with Daenerys. It's quite telling that not even she believes him. Their few conversations revolved around the White Walkers, politics, and Dany herself. And then he left, calling them strangers. The writers never created any in-depth conversations and bonding moments. Their interactions were quite unbalanced as well. He was a prisoner, a rebel, and it was basically just all about him bending the knee. You wonder what's supposed to be the foundation for Jon to fall in love with her, above all someone who's pretty much the opposite of him in many ways. In fact, the show wonderfully highlighted how different they really are, especially this season.
You stand in the presence of Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, rightful heir to the Iron Throne, rightful Queen of the Andals and the First Men, protector of the Seven Kingdoms, the Mother of Dragons, the Khaleesi of the Great Grass Sea, the Unburnt, the Breaker of Chains.
This is Jon Snow. King Snow, isn't it? No, that doesn't sound right. King Jon?
It doesn't matter.
We all enjoy what we're good at.
I don't.
Bend the knee and join me. Or refuse. And die.
They won't kneel for you. And neither will I. I don't want them to kneel for me. I want them to fight with me when the time comes.
They're beautiful, aren't they?
Wasn't the word I was thinking of, but...
I was born to rule the Seven Kingdoms. And I will.
You're good at this, you know.
At what?
At ruling.
No.
What they have in common is wanting to help, I guess, so that would make them very good allies, actually. And then Jon's behavior when he leaves Dragonstone. Jorah says goodbye to Dany, probably the most important person around her and for Jon to study. When Jon first met him, he seemed rather confused. Some people claim he was jealous, but he was really just observing. If he was jealous, then why did he never show it? They got along just fine beyond the wall, and Jon even showed a huge amount of respect for him by offering him Longclaw. But Jorah is also a former slave trader, and Dany is the breaker of chains. She freed slaves. Her reaction to him, however, showed Jon just how special Jorah is to her, despite his past. In an article, Kit even said that it was a weird one for Jon Snow meeting Jorah. Jorah is a man he's heard about as a slave trader and bad guy, and yet here's Daenerys trusting him. Jon already started to absorb the language of the people around Dany, and Jorah will be the most important person for him to study. Jorah is completely subservient. Dany is his queen, and he puts her on a pedestal just like Missandei does. This is important to make sense of Jon's behavior at the end of episode 6. Jorah had already noticed the look that Dany gave Jon when Jon insisted on leading the White Hunt. And now he puts on an extra show of affection as Jon comes out of the cave. Jon doesn't seem bothered at all and says a quick formal goodbye.
If I don't return, at least you won't have to deal with the king in the north anymore.
I've grown used to him.
I wish you good fortune in the wars to come, Your Grace.
He leaves and the camera stays focused on Dany. She seems pretty smitten by now, and Tyrion notices her look, probably feeling pretty bad for her. Then we see Jorah look back at her one last time, while the camera slowly moves from him to Jon, who does not look back. You always look back at the person you love, especially if you leave on a suicide mission and don't know if you'll ever see them again. Why would they make all these directing and cinematography and writing choices if they want to sell that Jon is in love at this point? Also, Jon never talked to anyone about Dany. He didn't bring her up with Jorah, and there was really enough time beyond the wall. Just Tormund mentioned her, and Jon only said that she would join his fight if he bends the knee. One possible explanation for Tyrion's comment is quite simple. Kind, gentle manipulation. Pretty much like Jon was trying. An episode earlier we got an interesting scene with Tyrion and Varys after the Field of Fire 2.0.
She gave Tarly a choice. A man who had taken up arms against her. What else could she do?
Not burn him alive alongside his son?
I am her hand, not her head. I can't make her decisions for her.
That's what I used to tell myself about her father.
Daenerys is not her father.
And she never will be. With the right counsel. You need to find a way to make her listen.
Tyrion feels his control over Dany slip away more and more. He knows that she likes to act impulsively, and he saw the Lannister soldiers burn, and those were his soldiers once after all. He saw how Jaime almost got killed. Telling Dany that Jon is in love with her might be an attempt to make her listen and to soften her and to make her act less impulsively. Tyrion knows that Jon's control over Dany is growing. After all, Jon managed to talk her out of flying to King's Landing with her dragons. Tyrion also very much noticed the longing looks that Dany gave Jon. I wouldn't be surprised really if Jon and Tyrion had a little off-screen talk later on, where Tyrion encouraged him to please Dany a little more. But now on to the biggest aspect of Jon's plotline and the peak of Political Jon. His decision to bend the knee after all and to sabotage the Dragon Pit meeting. The White Hunt fails of course, and Jon sends for Dany to come to the rescue, which she does. Jon of course has noticed her growing affection for him, but he knew if she wouldn't come for him, then at least for Jorah. Anyway, the plan fails even more and the Night King kills a dragon. One of Dany's children.
The dragons are my children. They're the only children I'll ever have. We are going to destroy the Night King and his army. We'll do it together. You have my word.
Thank you, Dany.
Dany. Here's the last person who called me that.
All right. Not Dany. How about my queen?
Jon left Dragonstone calling them strangers and telling her that she can't control his actions because he's a king. And now at their next encounter, he calls her Dany and my queen. He's not officially bending the knee here yet, there's no formal act or whatever. And anyway...
I'd bend the knee, but...
Everything before the word but is horse shit.
He just signals that he's willing to do that now. But why? What's different now? Some people think he saw her immense courage because she came to the rescue beyond the wall, and Jon now finally sees what a worthy queen she is. But how does that add up really? They were beyond the wall after all because of her. So she could show a white to Cersei for a ceasefire. Sure, it was Tyrion's plan, but she agreed to it. Why is she suddenly so special that he doesn't just call her Dany, but is also willing to give her his kingdom? Jon wouldn't bend the knee unless he deems it absolutely necessary. Not because of his pride, he never asked to be king, but for his people.
You all crown me your king. I never wanted it. I never asked for it. But I accepted it because the North is my home. It's part of me, and I will never stop fighting for it, no matter the odds. The Lords of the North place their trust in me to lead them, and I will continue to do so as well as I can.
The North is not a token of gratitude or a consolation prize because he lost a dragon. If Jon gives it away, he allows someone else to rule not just over his people, but also his family. Jon knows the mentality of the North. He knows what his people are thinking. They warned him repeatedly at the beginning, and he needs to picture a scenario where they survive and Dany actually ends up on the throne. Above all, Jon is now willing to bend the knee, even though she already said she would help him fight the Night King. He had a choice. But really? What did really change between Jon leaving Dragonstone, where he never seemed to care about Dany's claim to the throne at all, where he even had to talk her out of flying to King's Landing with her dragons, and now? She lost a dragon. The mother of dragons lost a child. Jon learned how special the dragons are to her. If she's mainly driven by revenge for Viserion, one of her children, her family, then the love for this family might also be the reason why she could potentially back out again, if she deems her remaining dragons in danger. Jon, after all, witnessed before how Dany was about to ditch plans and to do what her impulsive nature told her to do. This could be an attempt to keep her focused on his cause, his mission. Jon must also know that the Night King could possibly resurrect Viserion, so this is even more important now. And then the Dany and my queen talk. Where is this coming from? Strange to say the least, if not downright out of character. Where is this language coming from?
I serve my queen because I want to serve my queen.
I return to your service, my queen.
From Dragonstone. Jon absorbed the language of the people around Dany, everyone who worships her and sees her as special, especially Jorah. Jon modeled his way of talking after them to find a way to deal with her. He knows how to please Dany and he knows what moves her. He modeled his behavior after Jorah most of all, since he saw just how much he means to Dany despite his slave trader past. And now he sounds like another subservient version of Jorah. And not just that, he also reinforces the physical contact again with the hand-holding. A classic Jorah move. And in addition to the hand-holding, he also does his best to soften his eyes for a loving look. This is absolutely screaming gentle manipulation, really. And the way Kit is acting in this scene, it would completely match the theory that we are pursuing. But this hand-holding is also interesting because we've seen this with Jon before. Sansa reached for his hand. It was the moment when she convinced him to fight for Winterfell. And now he seems to use the same tactic with Dany. Some people think that Jon didn't just bend the knee, but also fell in love with Dany now because he saw her courage and because she came to the rescue. But if being saved is the foundation for Jon to fall in love with someone, then he must have fallen in love quite a few times already. There's also another interesting detail about this scene. After she left, he opens his eyes again and sighs quietly, looking rather disturbed. Now why would they add this? It's not a love-struck sigh and expression. He's probably thinking, what have I gotten myself into? He's wondering if he did the right thing, and it's certainly not a decision that is easy for him. Also, he's taking advantage of Dany's affection for him. If you think that's not possible, and it would be so unlike Jon, it's not. But you can't really analyze this without the absolute peak of Political Jon at the Dragon Pit.
If my brother Jaime has informed me correctly, you're asking me for a truce.
Yes. That's all.
Yes, that's all. Cersei sees the white and agrees to the truce under one condition.
In return, the king in the north will extend this truce. He will remain in the north where he belongs. He will not take up arms against the Lannisters. He will not choose sides. I ask it only of Ned Stark's son. I know Ned Stark's son will be true to his word.
I am true to my word. Or I try to be. That is why I cannot give you what you ask. I cannot serve two queens. And I've already pledged myself to Queen Daenerys of House Targaryen.
I'm pleased you bent the knee to our queen. I would have advised it, had you asked. But have you ever considered learning how to lie every now and then? Just a bit?
I'm not going to swear an oath I can't uphold. Talk about my father if you want. Tell me that's the attitude that got him killed. But when enough people make false promises, words stop meaning anything. Then there are no more answers, only better and better lies. And lies won't help us in this fight.
Wow. Wow. Pure good, honorable Jon Snow bent the knee to Dany. There was still no formal act, but whatever. And couldn't lie about it to Cersei because he's not able to lie. Not even when it comes to saving Westeros. He's suddenly so committed to Dany and supports her as queen, and is also head over heels now. And it's all based on her coming to the rescue beyond the wall. That's why he gave away the North despite all warnings to be smarter than Robb and Ned.
And here I am. A Northern Fool.
Nonsense. But let's jump back to the start. What Cersei is asking is actually absolutely reasonable. What's really interesting is Jon saying he can't serve two queens because he's already pledged himself to Daenerys Targaryen. Jon has never served any king or any queen before. He was in the Night's Watch for years. His entire character arc has always been built on protecting the North from the White Walkers. This goes way back to his time as steward to Lord Commander Mormont.
When dead men, and worse, come hunting for us in the night, do you think it matters who sits on the Iron Throne?
No.
Good.
The scene that explains the motivation of Political Jon the best is one beyond the wall. Jon had a discussion with Beric Dondarrion, who was brought back from the dead 6 times by the Lord of Light. Jon is still wondering why the Lord of Light brought him back.
So what's the point in serving a god if none of us knows what he wants?
I think about that all the time. I don't think it's our purpose to understand. Except one thing. We're soldiers. We have to know what we're fighting for. I'm not fighting so some man or woman I barely know can sit on a throne made of swords.
So what are you fighting for?
Life. Death is the enemy. The first enemy and the last. The enemy always wins. And we still need to fight him. That's all I know. You and I won't find much joy while we're here. But we can keep others alive. We can defend those who can't defend themselves.
I am the shield that guards the realms of men.
This is exactly the point. Just like Beric Dondarrion, Jon is not fighting so some man or woman he barely knows can sit on the Iron Throne. They are fighting for the people. And he even said that he still saw Dany and him as strangers when he left Dragonstone. Jon is the shield that guards the realms of men. And in this scene he also says whom he is really serving.
We both serve the same lord. I serve the North.
Exactly. So why does he now openly pledge himself to a queen, and a queen whose mindset he was constantly questioning at Dragonstone? He questioned Missandei when she told him that Dany would just let her leave if she wanted to leave. He was wondering why Dany trusted a man like Jorah, a former slave trader who brought shame to his family, meaning Jon questioned her judgment. She showed her knowledge of Westeros. The continent she believes she is born to rule is quite limited, since she thought the Northern Lords would simply kneel to her if their king does. He did his best to keep her from taking her dragons to King's Landing, where they could possibly do more damage than intended. if he bends the knee to her, they all survive the war and she ends up on the throne, she would have power over the North and his family. Jon got warned repeatedly before he left Winterfell, especially about Cersei. Jon knows she is not trustworthy, that the entire court of King's Landing is not trustworthy, after all his father got betrayed and executed there. No matter what Cersei would say or demand, Jon knows he has to stay away from it and her. The only thing that matters to him is pleasing Dany. He had to show her his complete and utter loyalty in front of everyone, even the current Queen of Westeros, because that's what she values, what she treasures, what moves her. And only she is allowed to have power over him, not Cersei or anyone else. He had to think real quickly when Cersei put him on the spot. He had to choose between giving in to something someone else requests or refusing it in order to put on a very dramatic demonstration of loyalty and commitment towards Dany that he knew would push all the right buttons. And he did great considering what he wanted to achieve all along, getting Dany on his side and keeping her there, ergo tying her to his cause. This is 1,000 times more important than giving in to something that Cersei demands, a deal that she may or may not stick to. And he now takes it on an even more personal level, since he already noticed Dany's growing affection for him and because she lost a child. He gets her more and more personally invested in his cause via himself, because his cause is defeating the White Walkers, and these very same White Walkers already killed one of her children. Cersei is not important to him. She was never part of his mission. He never contacted her and asked for her help, and she is the Queen of the Seven Kingdoms after all. Now why didn't he do that? Shouldn't he try to rally as many armies as possible? But he knows she cannot be trusted, she had already declared him her enemy, and she doesn't have dragons. He only had to deal with Cersei because of Dany's war with her. His stated mission was getting Daenerys to join his fight with her dragons and army. He pretty much only needs the dragons, and Dany already lost one. He needs to tie her to him, no matter the cost. If we take a look back, Jon had to constantly adapt his tactics and approaches based on the outcome. The first meeting just with rational words, a failure. The personal cave approach with an intimate atmosphere and the emphasis on togetherness, a failure. He then started the people approach. He studied the people close to her, questioned them, learned how to really handle her and deal with her, what moves her and what pleases her. He took over the language and behavior of the subservient people around her, and also the language of herself, reassuring her that she is special and not like everyone else. Achieved his first success when he managed to talk her out of flying to the Red Keep. Took it further with a combination of sweet talking and physical contact on the boat, and now it culminates and reaches its absolute peak in this over-the-top theatrical demonstration of complete and utter subservient loyalty in front of everybody.
I serve my queen because I want to serve my queen.
You asked me to find a cure so I could serve you. Allow me to serve you.
I cannot serve two queens. And I've already pledged myself to Queen Daenerys of House Targaryen.
Excellent job, Politician Snow. Excellent job. Judging by Dany's reaction, he hit exactly the right buttons. According to the leaked script, she was very turned on by this. She tried to downplay it later, but she was clearly overwhelmed. But this might also be the moment where she completely misreads the signals. It's really not surprising she didn't believe Tyrion when he said Jon was in love with her. Jon didn't give her anything at Dragonstone, not even a look back when he was leaving. If we look at the men in her life, then love was always connected to her getting something. Drogo promised to cross the Narrow Sea for her and give her the throne her father sat upon. Daario killed his superiors to show her his loyalty and took over the Second Sons for her. Jorah almost died to get her Tyrion Lannister as mighty gift. And now Jon didn't just bend the knee apparently, he also gave her his unconditional loyalty, wrapping it in sweet words while using his reputation as honorable Northern Fool in his favor to divert from his true motives. Dany may read this as love, for Jon it's love for the North. Jon claims that the reason why he had to fuck up the Dragon Pit meeting was that he can't swear an oath he can't uphold, make false promises, and spread lies because lying is bad. Jon is very much able to lie, he is also able to break vows. Friendly reminder.
Nah, I talk like a wildling. I ate with the wildlings. I climbed the wall with the wildlings. I lay with a wildling girl.
You admit to breaking your vows, then?
I do.
He went undercover with the wildlings and betrayed them for the Night's Watch. He took advantage of his relationship with Ygritte and betrayed her. Corran Halfhand came up with the undercover plan, but Jon did go through with it also because he believed it might work. In the books, he forced Gilly to leave her baby behind and switch it with Mance Rayder's baby because he feared Melisandre might burn Mance's child for its king's blood. Thinking he's suddenly not able to do shady stuff and lie when it comes to saving Westeros is ridiculous. But Jon never swore an oath to Dany. He never made any promises. The only one who did make a promise was Dany herself.
We are going to destroy the Night King and his army. We'll do it together. You have my word.
She needs to be bound to this word, which is why he stresses it so much. She made a promise, not him. The very fact that they still went to King's Landing after all, that Dany still insisted on a truce, told Jon that the throne was still her priority despite her promise on the boat. This knowledge played another major role in his decision to openly pledge himself to her. He has to shift her priority towards the north once and for all, by all means necessary. Dany even said to him that her dragon died for nothing if the Dragon Pit meeting failed, which is pretty rich, and showed that her war with Cersei was still above everything. I'm pretty sure if Jon had truly wanted to bend the knee to Dany, he would have talked to Davos first, and he would have informed Sansa. He looked at Davos before he looked at Dany at the Dragon Pit, because he was put on the spot by Cersei and pressured into a decision. On the boat, Jon gave Dany some empty words after her dragon died, hoping to keep her on board with this, without an oath, without a formal act, and without witnesses. Which means he never bent the knee officially. He knows the Northern Lords won't accept her anyway. So it's not even certain if he really bent the knee. He would very much be able to lie to Dany herself about bending the knee to her to enhance his manipulation. And if he did bend the knee, he wasn't honest about his true motives, which is protecting the North and his family, his pack, which is now also Arya and Bran, who are still alive. The Starks have always been about protecting their pack, even more so now after all they suffered. He took advantage of his honorable Northern Fool image to cover up his actual dishonesty. He made everyone believe he wasn't able to lie to cover up his actual lie. Would manipulating a person for the sake of protecting the people of Westeros really make him the worst person ever? Is he too honorable for that, too pure? He even muses about something like this in the books. I am the sword that guards the realm of men, Jon reminded himself, and in the end that must be worth more than one man's honor. A recurring theme in Jon's Season 7 storyline was that he has to do better than people before him. Better than Robb, better than Ned, better than Mance Rayder. He had conversations about Mance, Jorah Mormont, and also Ned beyond the wall.
My father was the most honorable man I ever met. He was good all the way through, and he died on the executioner's block.
Jon is very much aware that being good and honorable doesn't get you far in life. It can still be your doom. Jon himself did something he thought was right, and he was murdered for it. He was also murdered for doing something that he knew at least half of his people wouldn't like. Why would he now do a similar mistake again, without any second thought and without ulterior motives? He got resurrected, he came back to life, he learned, and he changed. How could he not after all that happened to him? And why would Jon betraying the North be more acceptable than him betraying Daenerys? In another scene with Theon, Jon even says that it just seems like he's always doing the right thing.
You've always known what was right. Even when we were all young and stupid, you always knew. Every step you take, it's always the right step.
It's not.
It may seem that way from the outside, but I promise you, it's not true.
Jon straight out admits that there is more beneath the surface than what people see, that not every step he takes is always the right step. And let's not forget that Dany is no innocent either. Besides everything she was willing to do to get to Westeros, she has broken hearts before as well. She dumped Dario and said she felt nothing. So, after Jon openly pledged himself to Dany, he does a little more sweet talking.
They were terrifying. Extraordinary. They filled people with wonder and awe, and we locked them in here. They wasted away. They grew small. And we grew small as well. We weren't extraordinary without them. We were just like everyone else.
You're not like everyone else.
Dany is really honest about the Targaryen mentality here. The dragons made the Targaryens feel special. They weren't extraordinary without them. They were like everyone else. She already lost one, which is why Jon has to assure her that she is not like everyone else. Dragons or no dragons. You are extraordinary. You are special. You are not like everyone else. Also, Dany tells him here that the dragons filled people with wonder and awe. The very same Jon heard this on the way to the dragon pit just a few minutes earlier.
Why did they build it?
Dragons don't understand the difference between what is theirs and what isn't. Land, livestock, children. Letting them roam free around the city was a problem.
I imagine it was a sad joke at the end. An entire arena of a few sickly creatures smaller than dogs. But in the beginning, when it was home to Balerion the Dread, it must have been the most dangerous place in the world.
Why would he honestly pledge himself to a queen who brought these very same dragons back to Westeros? He himself was terrified when he was petting Drogon, and he called the dragons beasts. To him, they are essential weapons for the Great War. However, Jon has now openly pledged himself to Daenerys and apparently bent the knee. He did everything to bind Dany to him and his cause. But there is one problem.
So what now?
I can't forget what I saw north of the wall. And I can't pretend that Cersei won't take back half the country the moment I march north.
It appears Tyrion's assessment was correct. We're fucked.
Summary of past events. Jon Snow was north of the wall several times. He fought the White Walkers. He barely survived the deadly massacre at Hardhome. It became his life goal to protect the North and Westeros from the White Walkers. Basically, his entire character arc has been built around this. He died for decisions he made in the process. He's currently preparing the entire North for the Great War. He went beyond the wall again to get a mighty queen with dragons to march north. He almost died again in the process. And yet here is Dany telling him that despite everything, despite him openly pledging himself to her and apparently bending the knee, despite seeing the White Walkers herself and losing a child, she is still thinking about the throne and her war with Cersei. And Jon flippantly replies with a, "Well, I guess we're fucked then," while he falls even more for her. This is not Jon. This is not Jon. And if it's supposed to be him, then it's really the biggest character assassination I've ever seen in any show or story. At the beginning of the season, he said this to Sansa.
I'm consumed with the Night King because I've seen him. And believe me, you'd think of little else if you had too.
Jon thinks that anyone who saw the Night King thinks of little else. But Dany still does. It's this moment that makes Political Jon show up at her door on the boat. Actually, it's the last logical consequence. He tried everything so far, and if he truly wants to keep her with him, he needs to get her truly personally and emotionally invested in his cause. Yes, she agreed to sail north with him after all. She even chose his plan over Jorah's, who said she should fly with her dragons for her safety and not take the king's road. Jon's power over her is growing more and more. But what happens if things go wrong again? What happens if Cersei does something that enrages Dany again? Jon witnessed how Dany reacted when Cersei seemed to be winning. Enough with the clever plans, I'll take my dragons to King's Landing. Cersei had surprisingly pledged her forces to the north, which of course was a lie. Jon knows not to trust her and that something must be off. In any case, he never asked for her forces to begin with. He just needs Dany. He just needs the dragons. That was his stated mission when he left Winterfell. Dany told him she can't have children. He said maybe the witch was not reliable, but how would he know? He probably just wanted to give her a glimmer of hope that she could have some legacy apart from her dragons. After all, he never wanted to father a bastard, but he doesn't even know if they survive. If he shows up at her door out of pure love, that also doesn't add up with how the scene itself got presented. He hesitates before knocking, and his entire posture and body language looks more like an actor getting ready to play a role. Then no dialogue, no first kiss, the most important moment in any love story, the moment everything builds up to. He doesn't even let his hair down, probably symbolic of him still not letting his guard down. No undressing, no emotions, just cut and right into it. And this expression? I wonder if Tyrion is in on it at this point. He was looking a little ashamed when he walked away, after looking concerned. And the audience also learns that Jon is a rightful Targaryen and the true heir to the throne. This is something that Political Jon could not model into his approaches. He's a legitimate Targaryen who gave the North away to another Targaryen. The outcome of that remains to be seen, but a final look at the scroll that Jon sent to Sansa might give some consoling clues. Cersei Lannister has pledged her forces to our cause, as has Daenerys Targaryen. Surprisingly, he mentions Cersei first, and she was never part of his mission, maybe a signal that something might be off. And then, if we survive this war, I have pledged our forces to Daenerys as rightful queen of the Seven Kingdoms. It's tied to a condition, if we survive the war. And even if they survive the war, how many northern forces will there be left, really? They should be massively decimated, and so will be Dany's. And he finishes, we are both coming to organize the defense of the realm. Meaning Cersei is not coming. And he explains why they are coming and why he seemingly bent the knee. Not to crown Daenerys, it's about the defense of the realm, which was the entire purpose of his mission. For Jon, it has always been about the protection of the people. His entire Season 7 arc was about this. A solid continuation of his character and arc, with a great dose of character development based on what he learned, how everything he had experienced changed him and made him come into his own as selfless, savvy, responsible, smartened up and cunning leader with smart political skills. He did everything in his power to get someone who commands dragons and a massive army to come north to join their fight and to keep her there, no matter what. That's what his people need to understand. And hopefully they will understand that all he did was for them, for the people and for the greater good.
You and I won't find much joy while we're here. But we can keep others alive. We can defend those who can't defend themselves.
I am the shield that guards the realms of men.
Maybe we don't need to understand any more than that. Maybe that's enough.
Aye. Maybe that's enough.
Yes, that's enough. Thank you so very, very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I really love this theory and think it would absolutely redeem Jon's character. And I really, really hope there's more to everything. Thank you very much and see you sometime in the future for another video, whatever that may be. Thank you and bye.